I started out with Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras for some very specific reasons, and I'm sticking with Olympus Micro Four Thirds for those same reasons. Let's talk about what those reasons are. Hey, thanks for joining me. When I got started with digital photography, I had some very specific things I was looking for, and I started doing some research, and I landed on Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras for some very specific reasons. So what I want to do this morning is kind of go over what those reasons are and talk about why I made the choices that I did, and also, those same choices are why I'm going to stick with Olympus Micro Four Thirds. So let's get started. Before we do, if you would, please click on the like and subscribe buttons, and let's get started. So the first reason that I chose Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras is value for the dollar and affordability. So when I started researching and looking for digital cameras, I found that the Olympus cameras and the Micro Four Thirds format in general offered more value for the dollar. I could get more equipment, more features for the same money. The lenses were cheaper, camera bodies were cheaper. The camera bodies had a lot of features that some of the other DSLRs didn't have. And so I just felt like I was getting more bang for my buck, if you will, by going with the Olympus Micro Four Thirds. So and that has proven out. I've been able to afford equipment and afford new camera bodies and new lenses and things like that I probably wouldn't have been able to afford had I gone with some other format. So value for the dollar, bang for the buck. I think Olympus and Micro Four Thirds is really the place to go. So that's reason number one. So reason number two that I chose Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras was brand reputation. Olympus has always had a reputation for innovation. They brought out cameras in the 60s like the half-frame SLR Pen F series that were really unique, really wonderful cameras. Later on, they brought out the OM series, the OM 1, 2, 3, and 4. And their cameras were just really unique designs. They didn't just do the same thing everyone else did, maybe a little bit differently. They really took a fresh look at how to design things and did those things, without just kind of following along with what everyone else did. And so I knew that with Olympus cameras, I would get a lot of really great innovation. And in fact, Olympus, when they developed the Micro Four Thirds standards, Panasonic actually came out with the first mirrorless camera in 2008. And less than a year later, Olympus came out with this EP1. And they were in the forefront. Micro Four Thirds was in the forefront of, innovation in terms of mirrorless cameras. So, the reputation of being an innovative company, is certainly one that Olympus is living up to. Second thing is quality. When you pick up one of their cameras, they feel solid. They have a heft to them. You're not just picking up some cheap plastic thing, and they're just solidly built. And like I used to repair cameras for a living, and I got to see the insides of these cameras. And Olympus cameras were always just beautifully made inside, very high quality construction. And they're reliable, robust cameras. And so I knew, from brand reputation, I knew that if I bought Olympus Micro Four Thirds equipment, I'd have good solid equipment. And that has that idea has borne itself out in the equipment that I've purchased and used. It has been very reliable and just great to use. So brand reputation was reason number two. Reason number three was I wanted a mirrorless design. Mirrorless cameras to me just make more sense. To me, an SLR, a DSLR, a camera that uses a moving mirror in between the sensor and the lens is kind of an anachronism. I worked for a photo studio back in the early days of digital, and we switched over to Fuji S2s, which were a Nikon body that Fuji then added their electronics to. And they were good cameras and they worked fine, but to me it just didn't seem logical using a photo sensor instead of film, not to use that sensor to view the image as well as to take the picture. It just, we did it with video cameras. I just didn't seem to make sense to me why we had to have a moving mirror in the camera. And it took several years, obviously, for that finally to come to fruition. But the mirrorless design to me just makes more sense. They're quieter, they're more compact, they're They have less vibration. Just the whole concept of a mirrorless camera, just to me, made more sense. The second part of that, in terms of wanting a mirrorless camera, was the ability to adapt vintage lenses. I wanted to use a lot of the vintage lenses that I already had on the cameras, and so I'd already researched and found out that I could buy adapters for very little money, and so I wanted cameras that would allow me to use those vintage lenses. And you can adapt some lenses to DSLRs, but in a lot of cases you lose infinity focus, or there's a very limited number of lenses that'll fit a particular DSLR. So I knew going with the Olympus Micro Four Thirds mirrorless cameras that I would be able to adapt all the vintage lenses that I had. So mirrorless technology to me was something that was, I definitely wanted to have. And there were possibly other choices for mirrorless cameras. There definitely were other choices. But when you put all my reasons together, I ended up deciding on the Olympus for a lot of those reasons. So a mirrorless camera to me was really an important part of that decision making. Reason number 4 that I chose the Olympus Micro Four Thirds line is that they're compact and lightweight. And yeah, I know I just said that the camera had a heft to it. It does. It's solid feeling. But in general, compared to other larger format cameras or DSLRs, these cameras were more compact, lighter weight. The lenses weigh less. They're smaller. Just the whole setup allowed me to carry more equipment in less space. And to me, they also had a very, very familiar feel. I used to shoot rangefinder Leicas, and wish I hadn't sold all those, but they were similar in size and heft like this old Canon L2. And I was used to a camera that kind of had that format and that, that size and weight, and the Olympus Pen series came real close to that. This had a good solid feel, but they were compact. I could carry, several lenses and a couple bodies, and it didn't take up much space. At the time I got started with these, I had the first camera I bought was an EPL5, and I did a video about the EPL5 just a little bit ago. I'll put a link in the description down below. You can go back and look at that if you want. But the EPL5 and this EP1 body and a few lenses would fit in a very small bag. So when I traveled, I was still traveling quite a bit for work back then, I could take, all this equipment, and it just didn't take up much space. It didn't weigh much. And so that was a big part of it. I just didn't want a bunch of big bulky equipment. So I really liked the fact that I could get all the image quality and features and all that stuff that I want in a very compact, very packable equipment set. So the weight, the size, all those things are really important, especially if you're traveling. The compact nature of the Micro Four Thirds system is just remarkable. And even if you're not traveling, even if you're just doing wildlife photography, or if you're doing, really any kind of photography, you're going to be able to carry more gear in less space with less weight with Micro Four Thirds and like the Olympus equipment than you can with any of the full frame or bigger format cameras. So compact size and weight, those were important to me. Reason number 6 that I chose the Olympus Micro Four Thirds line was image quality. Now, when I first started looking at getting back into photography and choosing digital equipment, I did a lot of research looking at images on Instagram and Flickr and some Facebook groups, and the thing that I found is that there didn't seem to be any question that the Micro Four Thirds and the Olympus cameras delivered image quality that seemed, at least from what I could see, even on a fairly large monitor, every bit of what I could see from other brands. I mean, the image quality was there. It was solid. And that has, also proven itself out over time using this equipment. The image quality that I get from these is just fantastic. I couldn't ask for more. I suppose if you were shooting images to be used on really large billboards or something, maybe. And actually, at that rate, you probably need to go to medium format or large format. But for the kind of work I was doing, the image quality was just solid. And so I knew that with the Olympus equipment that I would have the image quality that I wanted, along with all these other features and reasons that I wanted the cameras. But, in the end, all the other features and reasons that I liked this equipment would be meaningless if it didn't have the image quality. But the fact of the matter is, the Olympus cameras, certainly deliver the goods when it comes to image quality. So that's reason number 5, fantastic image quality. Reason number 6 that I chose the Olympus Micro Four Thirds line was lens selection. One of the great things about Micro Four Thirds is the number of lenses that are available. Since you've got 2 major manufacturers, Panasonic and Olympus, making lenses, there's the Olympus, Imzuiko line of lenses. Panasonic has their Panasonic Lumix lenses as well as the Panasonic Leica lenses. So there's a wide range of lenses that are both either, affordable, lenses all the way up to some serious pro level lenses and everything in between. There's just a wide lens selection. So when it comes to choosing lenses, if I see a Panasonic lens maybe has a little bit, better performance or something that I like or some feature that I like, like this 20 millimeter pancake, I could buy a Panasonic lens. If I, wanted a lens and the Olympus lens seemed to have the features and the price and the quality of image that I wanted, I could go with Olympus. So I've got, Olympus lenses, I've got, a couple Panasonic lenses, and the, all of them have just been fantastic lenses. They're just great quality. Then there's vintage lenses, like this old Micro Nikkor. I had a whole bunch of old vintage lenses, and I had already researched and found I could get adapters. So I wanted to be able to use those lenses, and one of the great things with mirrorless camera is that you can adapt all these vintage lenses to it. So that really expanded the number of lenses that are available. And then there's a wide selection of aftermarket lenses or third-party lenses available for Micro Four Thirds. So the number of lens possibilities for the Micro Four Thirds system is probably greater than any other system, in that you've got 2 major manufacturers making their own line of lenses, plus the third-party lenses, plus all the vintage lenses. You just got a massive lens selection to choose from. So whatever your budget is, whatever your needs are, you can find a lens that will fit your needs, fit your budget, and deliver the quality that you need. So there's just that was one of the reasons I went with Micro Four Thirds, is just, the lens selection. And again, back to Olympus, one of the reasons I chose Olympus is I know that their lens quality reputation has always been stellar. So I knew that their lenses would be just fantastic, and they have been. So wide lens selection is reason number 6. So reason number 7 that I have is not actually a reason that I purchased Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras, but the reason I'm sticking with Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras. And that reason is my experience with these cameras. I have for the last almost 4 years been using this equipment on a pretty regular basis, and it has just been, they've been fantastic. They've been reliable, they've delivered great image quality for me. They've been fun to use and easy to use, just really been everything that I want from a digital camera. So I really just couldn't ask for more. So my experience with these cameras is the reason I'm going to stick with Olympus Micro Four Thirds. And I hope you can tell from my enthusiasm for this line of cameras how I feel about them, and that's all based on the experience I've had with them. So if you're looking at getting into digital photography and thinking about what kind of cameras to buy, or if maybe you're thinking about switching lines of cameras, I can only encourage you to take a look at the Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras. My experience with them has been a great experience, and I think if you choose that line, you probably would have the same results. So I hope this is helpful. If you're looking at new equipment, if you have any thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I always love hearing from you and appreciate you watching my videos. And as always, thanks for watching.